We saw so many of the same problems that we've been seeing from the Miami Hurricanes, especially in bowl games for the past 15 years. So, what exactly did the Hurricanes learn yesterday?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's Friday. This one's not a happy Friday, though. I am Alex Donno, your host. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for being here, even after a tough loss. I see the way Miami's fan base has been melting down, so I know everyone's unhappy today, so I appreciate those of you who are here. We are live right now on our YouTube channel, so if you're watching us right now, at 11 a.m. on Locked On Canes YouTube. Make sure to participate in that live chat. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel as we unpack what happened at the Pinstripe Bowl. And very importantly, because the offseason officially begins now, okay? Want to talk about the major objectives and the major milestones that are still coming up for Miami in this offseason, because as painful as yesterday was, we still, as a fan base, Cristobal and his team, as a coaching staff, every Miami player, as painful as yesterday was, you have to brush it off. You have to learn from it, and there's a lot they need to learn from it, and you've got to try to make this team better in the future. But the frustration is definitely there with so many of the same issues over and over and over again. And you know what? I got to be as positive as my guy Trelvis in here. Every day is a happy day. Thank you, Trelvis. We got another positive comment from Call Me the Cleanup Man. We're going to be okay. And listen, guys, one of my big challenges on this episode is going to be balancing my negativity from the Pinstripe Bowl loss, because there's plenty of that, but balancing that with my still hope and certain amount of positivity for the future, because I'm not throwing in the towel yet. And anybody who's in here watching this and listening to this right now probably has not thrown in the towel either, despite how painful that was. So that loss in the Pinstripe Bowl, first time Miami ever lost to Rutgers, by the way. They used to play each other 11 straight years in the Big East. Miami was 11-0 against Rutgers, 11-1 now. I'm not going to come out here and pretend that yesterday's game wasn't important, even though it wasn't obviously a major bowl game. It was the Pinstripe Bowl. And yes, Miami did have about a dozen players who either opted out or transferred. But I'm not going to lean on any excuses today, guys, because the entire idea of what Mario Cristobal is trying to establish in Miami is the principle that every game matters and every play matters. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, well, it was just the Pinstripe Bowl and it was a decimated roster. Every game matters. Every play matters. That's the culture that they're trying to establish there. And if that's the culture that you're building, you simply cannot hit that field yesterday after a month off and begin that game like you didn't want to be there. Because that's what it looked like in the first quarter. Miami didn't start tackling until the second quarter, and then they kind of stopped in the fourth quarter, but they didn't start tackling until the second quarter. The offense didn't wake up until the second quarter. And, you allowed specifically one player on the entire team to just demolish you. Rutgers star running back Kyle Manungai. I didn't talk about him enough pregame because, quite frankly, I didn't expect him to do what he did. I know he's a good player, but he turned Miami's defense into Swiss cheese yesterday. Rutgers won the game only throwing for 84 yards because they didn't have to throw. And here's a stat that really makes me sad about what Kyle Manungai did to Miami's defense yesterday. According to Pro Football Focus, he forced 14 missed tackles from Miami's defense. That's the most for any running back in bowl season so far this year. I felt like I was watching the 2018 or 2019 Miami defense again, where it was missed tackle after missed tackle. We turned back the clock to that era. And again, guys, this is a Miami Hurricanes team that hasn't won a bowl game since 2016. Prior to that, they hadn't won a bowl game since 2006. They're 1-12 in their last 13 bowl games. It's just the same old broken record. And, based on the effort, obviously I will still take Mario Cristobal over any of these recent previous coaches. I've not completely jumped ship. I'm not going rats off a ship on this, but, when it comes to the bowl game effort, it doesn't seem to matter if it's Manny Diaz or Mark Richt or, Randy Shannon or Al Golden or whoever. It's just the same old thing come bowl season, and it gets really, really frustrating. There was zero effort to block on that Dylan Joyce punt that was one of the turning points in the football game. Miami had scored 17 unanswered points before that. They were up 17-14. They had a lot of life at that point in the third quarter. And it was Jake Lichtenstein who just completely missed or didn't even try to block. That ended up being a blocked punt and a Rutgers touchdown on that play. That was a turning point. Miami never had another lead after that. And folks, for all of my negative takeaways from the game yesterday, the biggest one that I have, and this one to me, and again, I know you didn't have a lot of depth because of, players who have transferred out or opted out, and there were still some guys injured yesterday. However, tough love was still needed when it came to the Jacolby George situation, right? When you think about any of the plays that were missed, any of the blocks that were missed, any of the mistakes that were made, nobody on that roster yesterday did more to single-handedly sabotage that game than number 3 on offense. That was an absolute disaster class on the field and with the extracurriculars. I mean, Jacurri Brown hit him in stride, first pass of the game on a deep ball that would have been a 75-yard touchdown. He dropped it. Didn't even really look like he tried. And then repeatedly, three times, this dude gets flagged for unsportsmanlike personal fouls. And those are obviously the most costly penalties out there because those aren't football plays, right? That's not being too aggressive in a tackle. That's not lowering your head too much by accident. That's not being, a half second late, pushing a guy out of bounds. Like, you're talking about taunting. You're talking about allowing yourself to get provoked by the other team. That's just selfish. When you're that much of a hothead and you're repeatedly, if it happens once, you repeatedly cost your team 15 yards and you help cost your team, not the only reason they lost, but you help cost your team the football game because you're too selfish not to keep your emotions in check. That's terrible. Honestly, you can blame him, sure, but that also comes down to coaching. How is he allowed to stay on the field that long to get flagged that many times? Again, I know your team is shorthanded, but you have to send a message by benching a player when his selfish decisions are costing you. That's called tough love. Mario Cristobal should not have kept playing him after that. I know he's a talented player, and I haven't completely turned on Jacolby George. I hope he can put this stuff behind him and have a great season next year. But how do you expect him to fix these emotions if there's no consequence for him committing penalties like that? If you don't even bench the guy. And yeah, I know this has been a big topic of conversation. Miami's approach on offense, once again, was overly conservative, right? You converted an onside kick, which is fantastic, right? Miami had an opportunity to try and tie the game despite being outplayed. You have 27 seconds left, 2 timeouts needing to score a touchdown, and you don't throw beyond the sticks. And you ended up taking those 2 timeouts home with you. I don't know if you're saving them for the spring game or if you're saving them for week 0, August 31st against Florida, but you had to be more aggressive in that point. And, we can talk about, here's the thing. And, I don't know, people may clip what I'm about to say and be like, take it completely out of context and say, oh, this Miami guy, he's making excuses for losing to Rutgers. But, I don't mean this as an excuse, because when I say what I'm about to say, I still think Miami should have been able to adapt around this. I'll explain what I'm talking about when we come back, because we have so much to get to. And yeah, Category 5 Kane, you're right. It's not just a Jacolby George thing. It's bigger than just him. I mean, James Williams opted out of the game. He didn't play yesterday. That's another one who's had those problems with the hot-headed penalties. Bobby Washington. He only had one, but he had a hot-headed penalty that was another costly one for Miami. So we continue the conversation here. We do have, it's not all bad news today, guys, because we do have some good news that we found out this morning about your Miami Hurricanes football team. So I keep a smile on my face, man, and I appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate you guys lighting up the live chat. And you know what? We are not done yet, my friends. We are only getting started on this episode of Locked On Canes. And I'm only getting started with eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. Things like that bring home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making this post-Pinstripe Bowl, that's a lot of P's, post-Pinstripe Bowl episode of Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available free on YouTube. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel. If you listen to the audio version of Locked On Canes, which is great because you can take us with you wherever you go, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube podcasts, wherever you get your audio pods, and leave us a 5-star review if you care to do that. And guys, make sure after you watch this episode of Locked On Canes, you check out Locked On Sports Today. The Locked On Network has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming sports YouTube network. The conversation continues 24 hours a day at Locked On Sports Today. So make sure you check that out. All right, so what I'm saying is, and I'm sure like somebody on an FSU message board is going to clip this and say, listen to this Miami guy making excuses for what happened. Now, obviously, Miami's roster was diminished yesterday. I still think they should have had enough talent and they should have had enough creativity to beat Rutgers. All right. When you're talking about a dozen players who were not available due to opt-outs, no more eligibility, transferring, all that stuff. So the big difference we saw from Miami, and unfortunately they didn't have an answer for it, missing players on the line of scrimmage did not allow the Hurricanes to play to their identity. They were not able to play Cristobal or Cristobal ball, as I call it, because Miami's identity, which we started to see at points during the regular season, Miami's identity is bully ball, right? Now, that's also the Greg Schiano identity, and Schiano beat Cristobal at his own game because Rutgers, they were winning most every battle at the line of scrimmage. So Miami, without having the services of your Matt Lee and your Javion Cohen on the offensive line, without players like Leonard Taylor, who's headed to the NFL, or guys who are injured still like Akeem Mesidor and Nigel Lee Kelly on the defensive line, and of course the players you're transferring in are not available to play for you yet, Miami could not and did not win in the trenches. And as you can see, not only was there not enough depth to replace these guys, I mean, listen, I'm sure Mario Cristobal loves his nephew, and I'm sure he's an amazing human being, but undersized and was not getting the job done on the offensive line yesterday, okay? So not only did Miami not have the depth to overcome their deficiencies at the line of scrimmage, I thought the depth was going to be better than what we saw yesterday. But most importantly, and this is where I want to make sure you guys know I'm not making excuses, right? I can give you reasons why Miami was not able to play to their identity of bully ball, control the trenches. I can give you reasons why they weren't able to do that, but I'm not making excuses because one of the problems that we've seen time in and time out is there's not a plan B, okay, where Rutgers was clearly able to outman and outmuscle Miami in a lot of different situations. Their physicality was on point. Miami's clearly wasn't. Blame it on depth, blame it on effort, blame it on whatever. when you are deficient in areas like that, you need to be able to have a plan B when it comes to creativity, when it comes to the element of surprise, when it comes to being aggressive downfield. And Miami basically stuck to their plan A, which is try to keep playing bully ball, but you got bullied. The bully got stuffed in the locker in this case, which is the way that played out. And that's why I say I'm not making an excuse when I say that. But I do want to talk about what's next and why I'm not giving up hope for the future, right? I can be upset, and I am upset clearly about what happened yesterday. I was hoping that, we would actually see effort and a bowl victory for the first time in 7 years. We're going to have to wait at least another year to try and get one of those. But my being upset about yesterday and today does not mean I'm upset about tomorrow. Okay. This is going to be a long off season coming up. We have so many important goals and milestones in front of us. First of all, let's hope Mark Fletcher is okay. Miami's star, true freshman running back. He suffered a foot injury on his second carry of the game. Didn't look good when he came off the field. The good news is, according to Mario Cristobal, Fletcher's x-rays were negative, right? So that means there's nothing broken. There's nothing you could see on the x-ray. Further tests are taking place. Maybe I'm not a medical expert, but maybe a CT or an MRI to see what other damage there could be. But hopefully Fletcher can recover quickly, because Mark Fletcher, he's going to be a cornerstone player for Miami next year. And you'd like him to be healthy in time for spring football or for fall camp at the very latest, okay? Talent acquisition, of course, is still in progress for Miami. And listen, for as many complaints as you may have about taking the 2 timeouts home with you, about the conservative play calling, when it comes to talent acquisition, that's the stuff that Mario Cristobal excels in. And that's the stuff that Alonzo Highsmith excels in. Before the show even started, somebody left me a funny comment in the live chat that said, Mario coached yesterday like he was annoyed that the game was getting in the way of his recruiting. That may have been more accurate than you intended it to be, okay? And guys, next year could be kind of the make or break year for the future, right? Year 3 for Mario Cristobal. Oftentimes when you see a head coach start to hit their stride, when they take over, a deficient roster like Cristobal did a couple of years ago, when you're trying to change a 20-year culture, year 3 is usually a pivotal one. And next year, almost the entire roster is going to be made up of players that Mario Cristobal recruited or that Mario Cristobal brought in through the transfer portal. And, your top 7 recruiting class of 2023, and so many of these guys are going to be important players. We've talked about some of them already. Rueben Bain, who played great. Like, he was not the reason Miami lost that game yesterday. CeCe Maui-Noah had an awesome year at right tackle. Mark Fletcher got hurt yesterday, but had an incredible year. And, I've got really high hopes for guys like Jaden Wayne, the Washington Twins, Ray Joseph. There's so many guys from that 2023 class who are going to be in their second year next year. Handful of them were contributors year 1. A bunch of these other guys, Popo Aguirre, Malik Bryant. There's going to be more guys who are ready to make an impact next year. And so, the silver lining that I can give you guys is that Miami's opening day roster against Florida on August 31st is going to look significantly better and deeper than the Pinstripe Bowl roster did from yesterday, okay? Miami has already found Matt Lee's replacement for next year. I hope he's as good. I think he can be close to it. Zach Carpenter from Indiana, really good center. Miami really could have used him yesterday. Miami was also deficient on the defensive line of scrimmage on Thursday. They've already added a pair of experienced defensive tackles through the transfer portal. C.J. Clark from North Carolina State, Marley Cook from Middle Tennessee. You've got 2 5-star defensive tackles coming in and recruiting for next year. Now, again, when it comes to talent acquisition, when it comes to what Miami is looking to accomplish adding to the roster for next year, finding a quarterback is the number 1 goal, okay? Miami needs to get an answer, and hopefully soon, from Cam Ward. And if it's not Ward, try to seal the deal for somebody like Will Howard, who still hasn't signed anywhere else, KJ Jefferson, Jaden DeLora from Arizona, who just entered the portal this week. Somebody, the enrollment deadline for spring football, for the spring semester, I should say, because you have to be enrolled for the spring semester to play spring football. I think it's January 15th or 16th. So you really need to get your quarterback in for spring football. The clock is ticking on that. Okay. Now, as far as quarterback goes, I was pretty happy with the way that Jacurri Brown played yesterday. So let me give him a little bit of praise. Now, at the same time, you saw him grow into the football game. You saw him make some big boy throws and some big boy runs. At the same time, I don't know how many people, if any, came away from that game saying, you don't need a transfer. This is the guy. Let's not forget, I know he looks like he's 25 because he's so physically mature, but Jacurri Brown is going to be a sophomore next year. He's going to be a third-year sophomore next year. I still think he needs more seasoning. I hope he sticks around. I hope he doesn't leave Miami. I hope he continues to develop because he might very well be the answer in 2025, he or Emory Williams. I don't think either of them are the answer in 2024. Not if Miami's goals are what I think they are, right? If in 2024, if your goal is to win 7 games again or try to win 8 games, then yeah, maybe you ride with Emory or Jacurri. But if your goal for next year is to actually try to have that put up or shut up third season where you try to win 10, 11 games and compete for an ACC championship, then I think you need to add an experienced transfer portal quarterback like the ones that I talked about. But again, I like the improvement and development I'm seeing from Brown. And keep in mind, hadn't played a snap since 2022, right? He's definitely improved his intermediate throws and his timing. You saw how strong his arm is and how good some of his deep balls were. I mean, the touchdown, the one that did count to Restrepo, was an absolute dime. The one that didn't count was an excellent throw as well. And his first throw should have been a 75-yard touchdown, but Jacolby George dropped it. So, Jacurri Brown might be the answer in 2025. I don't think he is in 2024, but I like the way that he played. Okay. All right. So I do want to get to the best news of the day because it's not all bad coming out of yesterday. So my friends, what you want to do, first of all, if you're in the live chat right now, continue to fire it up, my friends. And oh man, it's again, the live chat has turned into Miami fans and Florida State fans arguing. It seems to end up like that every single day. I love you guys. And the Florida State fans, I don't necessarily love you, but I'm happy you're here. Because every click counts, even the ones from Florida State fans and Florida fans and whoever. So, folks, I do want to talk when we come back about Xavier Restrepo running it back for one more year at Miami and how important that is. My friends, I know we're down and out today after the Pinstripe Bowl loss, but keep that smile on your face. And most importantly, keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. And I know you're keeping it locked to Prize Picks. Guys, Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play DFS, because at Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. Guys, Prize Picks is the most fun I've ever had, winning up to 25x my money this football season. And now I can play during basketball season too. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and you place your entry. You can turn $10 into $250 with just a couple of clicks. And guys, Prize Picks, this is maybe the most important thing because everyone complains about this with daily fantasy, that what happens if your player gets injured. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So you want to go to prizepicks.com, prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use our code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use our code Locked On College, all one word, for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks truly is daily fantasy sports made easy. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Happy almost New Year. Can we start saying that before the year turns over, or can we only say that after? Whatever it is, happy holiday season. Merry belated Christmas. Thank you so much for being here. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available free on YouTube. And folks, if you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, sign up for our exclusive Locked On Canes Insiders chat. I include the link in the show description below. You get text messages directly from my phone to your phone and vice versa. You can ask me one-on-one questions on there. If we have time, either today or on tomorrow's episode, I want to read some of the comments that we got last night. Angry and hopeful comments from some of you from our Locked On Canes Insiders chat. I also give you guys breaking news, recruiting scoops. Whenever Miami gets a transfer quarterback, you know we're going to be all over it on Locked On Canes Insiders. Click the link in the show description below to try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, after 14 days, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. And we try to give you a lot of added value on there. Okay. All right. So, again, it's not all bad news today. My heart was warmed this morning when I saw Xavier Restrepo announce he is running it back next season at Miami. Thank goodness for that. Miami needs X's playmaking. We need his experience. We need the leadership and the continuity that he brings to the roster next year. And, if anybody thought, well, X, he could only catch passes from Van Dyke. X had a pretty awesome game with Jacurri Brown throwing him footballs yesterday. Had a touchdown, should have had 2 touchdowns, 11 grabs for 99 yards and a touchdown. His route running sets an incredible example. I wish that, more players followed X's example of precision in route running, hard work, attention to detail, and his technique and athleticism are on point as well. Xavier Restrepo, I thought he was probably Miami's MVP of the Pinstripe Bowl yesterday and one of Miami's most important players all season long. So I have only nice things to say about X. If everyone had played with the sort of effort that Restrepo played with yesterday and that Rueben Bain played with yesterday and Jacurri Brown, Miami would have won the game if everybody played like that. Okay. On the season, Restrepo, and he had an important game yesterday when it came to milestones, because in the Pinstripe Bowl, Restrepo went over 1,000 yards for the season, which is obviously a great milestone for any wide receiver. He finishes the year with 1,092 receiving yards. And he also broke Miami's single season receptions record. When he got his 80th catch, he broke that record. He ended up with 85 catches on the year, had 11 catches yesterday. So Restrepo, one of the major bright spots of the season for Miami and one of the very few bright spots in the Pinstripe Bowl yesterday. And, so with Restrepo, it's big that he decides to stay in Miami because, listen, we've seen players that don't have as high I don't know exactly how high his NFL draft stock would have been. He would have been drafted, right? And we've seen players with draft stock lower than his decide to leave. He decided to stay. And also, it's worth pointing out that, he and Tyler Van Dyke are obviously very close, great chemistry on the field, best of friends off the field. When Van Dyke hit the transfer portal, a lot of people, I didn't really fall into this because I know X loves it in Miami, but a lot of people when Van Dyke hit the transfer portal thought maybe Restrepo is going to follow him wherever Van Dyke ends up in Wisconsin. You know what? I don't think Restrepo wants to be in Wisconsin. Most human beings don't. So Restrepo deciding to stay is very important. And guys, let's not forget, knowing that you have a weapon like that, that's going to make things a little bit more attractive for Cam Ward or any transfer quarterback who decides to be in Miami, knowing you have X in place, right? Obviously, you've lost Colby Young to Georgia. Looks like Brashard Smith is probably on his way out. Unfortunately. And listen, I love Brashard. Thankfully, Miami does have young guys who can do a lot of the same things that he does. Ray Joseph and Nikar coming in from high school. They can hopefully, and I think Brashard Smith should have been used a lot more this past year. Hopefully you find a way to use Ray Joseph and Nykar the way you should have been using Brashard Smith for the last couple of years. I like Isaiah Horton. I think Isaiah Horton also had a really good game, had some big-time catches yesterday. He's definitely a candidate to be a starter next year to fill that spot that Colby Young left. And, folks, we're being real here. Miami, obviously, quarterback is objective number one in the transfer portal right now. One of your other top objectives, you need at least one more experienced wide receiver to come in, because there are a lot of good players, and you have a trio of awesome true freshmen coming in. JoJo Trader, Nykar, who I already mentioned, Chance Robinson. These guys, of course, will be very young. Ray Joseph and Robbie Washington are still very young heading into next year. I still think you need to go to the transfer portal to get another receiver, and also a guy you brought in last year. I hope Shamar Kirk can play a bigger role in 2024 than he played in 2023. So much more I feel like I still had to say, but I'm still nursing this flu or cold or whatever the heck I've got. I do need to, my wife has ordered me bed rest today, so I do need to take some rest, my friends, and we'll be back at you either later today or tomorrow with another episode. So huge thank you and shout out to everybody who joined us, watching us live on YouTube, listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. Thank you guys so much, and we will talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.